Hello everybody, Akari here, and today we are not talking about magic. Today I want to talk about something a little bit different. Instead of a spell, we're going to discuss a prominent theme in the story, and that's the parallels between the two generations of heroes, namely Negi's group, the Alba, or White Wing, and Nagi's group, the Rubra, or Red Wing. The two are constantly being compared to each other. The name Alba is even derived from Rubra. This kind of thing is actually relatively common in shonen. Naruto and Team 7 are obviously following in the footsteps of the three Sannin, and we all know that Luffy and the Straw Hat's journey is going to mirror that of Gold Roger and his crew. Having characters accomplish the same or similar things that their predecessors have done in the past is a great way to show growth and maturity, and I absolutely love it. So let's compare and contrast Nagi's Ala Rubra to Neji's Ala Alba. Obviously, none of these characters are one-to-one clones of each other. I'm just saying that they have the same roles in the group. Some of them are actually really different, as we'll see in a second. The most obvious comparison is Neji and Nagi. They're both the leaders and strongest members of their respective teams. They're both red-headed, use lightning magic, and are extremely charismatic. Neji even pretends to be Nagi for a while in the magic world. Most of this is because he's Nagi's actual son, so there's a clear physical resemblance, and Neji has inherited his father's magic power. But more than that, Neji deliberately tries to emulate his father. He learns all the same spells and uses the same fighting style, but their personalities are almost completely opposite. Nagi is confident, headstrong, and impulsive, like a typical shonen protagonist. Neji is shy, hesitant, and analytical. This becomes a plot point when Neji actually tries to be stupid so he can get stronger. Of course, this doesn't work, and he ultimately decides to go another way. He learns dark magic, which couldn't be more opposite from Nagi. In Negima, light and darkness don't oppose each other, but they do require opposite mindsets. Light is about trusting your gut, where darkness is about second guessing and looking at things objectively. And Neji and Nagi fall completely on opposite ends of the spectrum. Despite their differences, the one thing they share is an incredible ability to draw people to them. Everyone loved these guys, albeit for slightly different reasons. By the end of the series, they're both surrounded by friends who would gladly lay down their lives for them. Next up is Arika and Dasuna, the right-hand ladies of Nagi and Neji respectively. Both started off on pretty bad terms with their partner, but of course they eventually warm up to each other and become their most loyal teammates. Nagi and Arika actually get married, and while I personally don't ship Neji and Asuna, regardless of their relationship status, you can't deny that he is closer to Asuna than any other member of Alba. She always knows when something is bothering him or if he's hiding anything, just like Arika does with Nagi. Both are also descendants of the Ocean royal family, and this grants them certain special abilities. Magic Cancel for Asuna, and Royal Magic for Arika, whatever that is. Of course, Asuna is Neji's first partner. We don't know if Nagi and Arika ever made an official pact deal, though I do think it's likely, but he does swear his loyalty to her, and they are partners in that sense. And also, marriage partners, if you want to include that. And just like with Nagi and Neji, their personalities are flipped. Arika is quiet and reserved, and Asuna is loud and aggressive, and they both complement their partners perfectly. Kotaro is definitely the one on Neji's team that channels Raken the most. They're the best friend and rival to their leaders, which is especially important for Neji, because other than Anya, he didn't really have any friends his own age. Kotaro was one of the first people you could really connect to on a personal level, and Raken seems to be this for Nagi as well. They both have really straightforward and laid-back personalities, but they're not dumb. They're actually quite smart. Kotaro was able to figure out Takahata's technique after only seeing it a couple of times, and he was one step ahead of Shirabi throughout their entire fight. And Raken not only broke down Neji's new lightning speed instant movement almost immediately, He was also able to copy Aishin's ultimate Shinryu technique, just because he saw it once. They also both approach combat the same way, getting close and beat the enemy with their fists. This isn't super surprising since they're key fighters, but they do have other, arguably better options than a fight. Kotaro can manipulate shadows. He can teleport through them, block attacks, or make giant shadow hands. He can also summon his dog spirits to fight for him. And Raken knows magic. Granted, we only see him use it once, but he can use Magia Erebia, one of the strongest and most complex magic techniques out there. To be fair, a light-aligned character like Raken would not be compatible with dark magic like Magia Erebia, and when he uses it, it does cause him some pretty bad injuries. But the fact that he could use it at all means that he could use other spells. Or if he wanted to, he could just use his artifact to throw giant swords at people from dozens of kilometers away. He and Kotaro both choose to box with their opponents and risk getting punched in the face instead of using their long-range skills, because that's just the kind of guys they are. Their pasts are pretty similar too. Raken was born into slavery and had to fight as a gladiator for years to earn his freedom. Then he became a mercenary. While Kotaro was never a slave, he also had a really hard life. He was exiled from the dog tribe for being half human, and he's had to fend for himself ever since. He had to take on a bunch of shady jobs just to make a living, which is how he met Neji, and how Raken met Nagi. Both were hired to take the guy out, but after fighting them, they became best friends. It's a classic story. Boy meets boy punches boy in the face, boy declares their eternal rivalry, and they live happily ever after. The end. Setsuna and Aishin are the sword fighters of the group. Both are from Kyoto and practice Shinryu, and both are easily flustered about romance and anything sexual. Setsuna is also kind of Neji's unofficial second-in-command. I know I said he was closer to Asuna than anyone else, but in a combat situation, the first person he turns to is usually either Kaede or Setsuna. Which makes sense, they have more experience than anyone else in Alba. We don't know if Aishin was Nagi's number 2, but it is possible. They were inseparable friends, and he is extremely loyal to him. In their final battle, the only reason he didn't help fight the Life Maker was because he nearly killed himself protecting Nagi beforehand. Interestingly, Setsuna actually has even stronger parallels to another character in Yukio Holder. If you've read it, then you already know I'm talking about Kuromaru Tokisaka. Just like Setsuna and Aishin, he also uses Shinryu. But unlike Aishin, he is torn between solely using his sword to protect Tota or putting down his sword to pursue a more intimate relationship with him. Setsuna had almost the exact same dilemma with Konoka: stay as her bodyguard or actually get close to her. And in both cases, the person in question is a Konoe. Aside from their relationships, they're both demi-humans from a tribe of crow demons that abandoned them. And they are both very uncomfortable with their own bodies. Setsuna because of her white wings, which are considered a bad omen, and Kuromaru because of his gender. Or, I think it would be more accurate to say, his gender identity. Later, we're introduced to another Shinryu sword fighter named Isana. And Isana is basically just a smaller clone of Setsuna. Just like Setsuna, she's a serious Shinryu swordswoman and bodyguard of Honoka, who is basically just a smaller clone of Konoka. These characters aren't really explored outside of this, because they're mostly used for comic relief. But they're clearly meant to be the stand-ins for Setsuna and Konoka. They are also their granddaughters. Yeah, you heard that right. It's never made clear if Isana is Setsuna's granddaughter and Honoka is Konoka's granddaughter, or if they are both the granddaughters of Setsuna and Konoka. Somehow. I don't know, you figure it out. Next is Albirio Ima. And Al doesn't really have any direct parallels with anyone in Neji's group that I've noticed. But I do think there are two people that together fill his role on Alba. The first is Kaede. Both are probably the most experienced members of their groups. Al says that he's the oldest one there, when he's in the presence of Rakan, Evangeline, and even the Life Maker. Which, if that's true, means that he's over 2,600 years old, at the bare minimum. Okay, in all likelihood, he probably wasn't including the Life Maker in that statement, because he hadn't entered the battle yet, and if he's from the magic world, it would kinda be impossible for him to be older than the Life Maker who created the magic world. And if he's human, it's still impossible for him to be that old because, biology. But he's definitely the oldest member of Rubra, and Kaede has probably been training since he was a kid, and has consistently been one of the most reliable fighters, even late into the Magic World arc. They also have really weird and unorthodox fighting styles. Albera has gravity magic, which we've never seen anybody else use. He also has this really weird advanced clone technique. Kaede also has high density clones. She's also one of the very few people that can use void instant movement. She can hide in shadows, and she even has key techniques that can disable Al's clone technique. So it kinda makes sense that when they go up against Cosmo and Telekea, they both end up fighting Dynamis. They also wear big smiles on their faces, 24/7. I'm not saying it's a fake smile. For Kaede, it could just be that she doesn't let much bother her. But in Al's case, I think it's to hide his true intentions. He's still a good guy, no doubt about it. But he does seem kinda shady at first, and definitely has a whole lot of secrets. In their fight, Kaede even said that she can't trust his smile. I guess you could say that they use their smile to put people around them at ease, with varying degrees of success. Al's other counterpart is Konoka. That might sound really random, but hear me out. Konoka's whole thing is healing, which is actually pretty rare in Negima. Neji, Nagi, and even Anya can all use basic healing magic, but they all primarily focus on combat. Al is the only one in the whole manga who not only has lots of offensive firepower, but also advanced healing magic. No one can heal as good as Konoka because of her artifact, but Al can heal a broken arm with a single touch, and although we couldn't completely heal him, he got Nagi back on his feet when he had a hole blown through his chest. So they're the team's healers, and they're also somewhat more comical and goofy characters. Konoka herself doesn't have any direct foil, but like I said before, her granddaughter Honoka is Yuki Holder's version of her. She looks like her, she has a Shinmaryu bodyguard, and even uses Eastern magic, which I assume Konoka eventually learns. But other than Konoka and Setsuna, no one else has any obvious counterparts in Yuki Holder. The last original member of Alba is Phyllis Zept, and we know almost nothing about Zept. He's this kid right here. The only things we know about him for sure is that he looks about 10 years old and that Nagi calls him Master. Well, actually, we do know one more really big thing about him, but I'll refrain from mentioning that just in case some of you haven't finished the manga yet, and it doesn't really matter for this discussion anyway. What does matter is his apparent age and the fact that he's Nagi's master. Now, who do we know that has a childlike appearance and acts as a mentor to another character? You guessed it, it's Evangeline. As an immortal vampire, she never visibly ages, and after the Kyoto arc, she starts training Neji in magic. We don't really know anything about Zek's personality, but he seems pretty smart, and capable of making calm, rational decisions in battle, just like Evangeline. She knows more about magic than almost anyone else, and maintains her composure very well, even in the middle of a war. We don't know if Zect is a vampire, but I like to think he's also an immortal being. It would be a nice little nod. And also, it would be really weird if Nagi was training under an actual child. When he learns that Eva is Neji's master, Nagi actually does a double take. He was probably just surprised that Eva would take a student at all, but he could also just think it's funny that his son was trained by a little kid, just like he was. But those are all the parallels between the red and white wing, or at least all the obvious ones. If you can think of any that I missed, feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you want to leave a like and subscribe while you're there, I'd really appreciate it. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.